There we go. We have kicked off, and
So
well, I
it's another
suppose
V-Day, mate, isn't it? Yet
another
again.
what day?
Or a V-Day, I suppose. Vote Day.
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not? What happened?
No, no. There's been a huge change yesterday
Oh,
in the UK.
I haven't
I don't
seen
know
much.
if
The
I
markets,
think.
I assumed everything was as normal.
Well, it kind of is in some respects. It's a strange scenario that's happened over. Um, yeah, it's a strange scenario that's happened over the course of the last 24 hours because I don't know if you're aware of John Bercow. Do you know John Bercow, the speaker?
God, no, I've heard the name, and I see him shout and scream and things.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the man. That's the
yeah.
man, and he's the most famous, notorious, whichever way you want to put it. He's the most well-known speaker that we've ever had in Parliament for good and bad reasons.
Yep.
But he has come and said that Theresa May is not allowed to bring her deal back to Parliament, and I agree with him. I have to say, I think he's absolutely right because all it will end up doing is, it's a chance to bully ministers into going for her deal, and considering how much she's lost by each time, I don't see why she should be allowed to bring it back. They're not giving us the second referendum, and yet she's allowed to bring back this deal, whether we love it or not, time and time and time again, and I just don't think that's right. I don't think that's right that she should be able to do that. So John Bercow, the House Speaker, has said that she is not allowed to bring the same deal back, or a deal which is substantially similar to the deal that she's got. And it completely caught the government off guard. It wasn't. I'm sure I read about it a few days ago, but that he was thinking about this. But it's actually in Constitution that he's gone back and he said that it was written by. I can't remember the guy's name now. It escapes me, but it was written in Constitution that they're not allowed to bring back the same thing to vote on in the same session. So if it was a completely different government, they could, but with this specific thing, they're not allowed to do that. So she's going to have to get amendments if she's going to bring it now back to the House. It completely caught them off guard because they were planning to bring it back today. There was a little bit of support from the ERG. And the DUP were starting to come on side as well. So she may well have got it through this time, or it certainly would have been a bit closer. And that has put the brakes on everything. So John Bercow, as the Speaker, becomes the main protagonist of the story. And I have to say, the most unlikely protagonist of the story when you consider that the leader of the opposition has been pretty toothless. Somebody who's not even in government or not even in Parliament. Well, not in Parliament. He's not even in a party. Has
Doesn't have to
managed.
vote, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
No, and you know what's interesting is that the Remainers have kind of some Remainers have cheered this as if as to say that Theresa May will now have to go for an extension, and it sounds like she was drafting a letter. It was reported today that she was drafting a letter to ask for a 9 to 12 month extension from the EU. And the yeah, sorry, that was being reported that she was doing that overnight. And the other interesting aspect of it is that John Bercow's car had a picture taken of it, and it was a sticker that said "Remain." And so this is really kind of like, he's meant to be impartial. So this hasn't really gone down too well in some quarters. He's obviously come out and said that was his wife's car, so it's nothing to do with him because he's got to be impartial. So the Remainers have cheered it because it means that she's got to go and ask for an extension. But some of the Brexiteers have cheered it because they don't like the deal in the first place. And the truth is that Theresa May's deal is not Brexit, as much as they bang the drum that they are delivering for the British people, or 52% of the British people. It's just not true. 52% voted to leave, and they didn't vote for this customs union and everything else that Theresa May has brought back. So it has taken a really interesting turn. Now, how that manifests in the charts, as you say, has been pretty fascinating because the pound. In fact, let's start with the FTSE. This is what we had with the FTSE. Now, the FTSE has just been on this crazy drive to the upside, not testing anything on its way forward. I say not testing anything. It's I think it becomes more evident when we look at the longer term timeframes. This is the 4-hour chart, and as I say, you know, normally speaking, well, not normally speaking, in a regular trend, and a trend which is probably easier to trade, it comes back to the previous close and bounces from there. Example of that would be, this is a previous close, price comes down and it touches that previous close before it goes. This is a previous close, price comes down and touches that before it goes. This is a previous close, price comes down, struggles a bit, but then pops up. Again, touches the close. Again, touches the close. Again, touches the close. So, you know, these are regular or nice trends to trade. Is another example. Touches the close, touches the close. You know, burst forward first, then touches the close. Burst forward first, touches the close. So that's what I always look for as a nice, easy to follow trend. But look at this one. Nowhere near the close, and in fact, it almost struggled to touch the absolute high of this particular range. The next one hasn't really well, I suppose it did burst forward and come back and touch the high, but again didn't touch the close. This is the next point of resistance, nowhere near, just a complete surge to the upside. So a very irregular trend. Now, I obviously will use an indicator to give me extra confidence, but when it comes down to it, you don't need an indicator to tell you that this is not only overbought, but not only overextended, but you know, has a chance and potential to be embedded, which means that the indicator has got so overstretched that it stops working. But when I see this, one of two things can happen. Either we get another emotive leg to the upside, and this thing, because it is irregular, but it does happen where it just stretches and then stretches and then stretches. Or what's more common is that it stretches and stretches and stretches, and then it just pings and goes bang straight back down again. So it's going to be interesting to see what the price action holds here. Now, this has been, I believe, more about Brexit than most other things, because I think there was speculation that the pound would probably be a little bit weaker yesterday, you know, when they didn't get deals kind of going through. And let's have a look at the pound.
Yeah.
And that was what was happening. You know, the pound didn't break through levels, but it was weakening over the same period that the FTSE was strengthening. Now, they were also at one point in complete conjunction with each other, where they were both strengthening. And the reason for that is that a deal that Theresa May brings is better for the pound than not having a deal at all, and it gives the UK economy some certainty. And the deal is bad, but it's not atrocious. So that would have strengthened the pound somewhat. But by the same token, it will strengthen the FTSE, because the FTSE obviously is reliant on decent trade. So if it can get some deal, passing through, then the trade will continue and then strengthen the stock market. So it's quite interesting now what happens. You know, who takes the charge? Does the pound strengthen from this point because there is uncertainty in the fact that the Remainers are kind of back in charge? Does it weaken because uncertainty is bad for a currency, or does it pretty much remain the same? And you'd have to plump for the latter, because there's no real kind of, there's nothing really to grasp around with it. You know, we can't really say that this is positive news or negative news, and subsequently it probably means that the pound will probably move in a fairly choppy fashion sideways, if anything. Now, the FTSE, because of that, will potentially weaken from this point just because of the overextension and possibly a lack of buyers. Because they've just exhausted themselves with the run to the upside. Now, this is the line. So if it crosses through this particular level, then we will see some downside. Now, that downside doesn't suggest at this point that it will be that substantial, but it does suggest that it's probably going to happen. Now, if I bring in the hourly chart here, the hourly chart gives us about a few bounce points that may well give us the retests. Now, obviously, we still want to look for the long because the move to the upside has been so emphatic. But I think the way that I'd now like to be looking at this, unfortunately, I am traveling tomorrow, so today, so taking trades is going to be a little bit more dangerous for me. But the way I'd like to look at this is to see if we do actually break this low, this support line down here, and subsequently the trend line. The trend line becomes maybe a channel, maybe it's not a channel, maybe it's more of maybe it's more of a, I guess, yeah, that's it's close enough to be a channel, I think. But measured move on this is going to be breaking down to somewhere in about this area, and that area actually looks fairly sensible. It looks like a fairly sensible area for this to break down to. So I'm not sure if it's going to touch this weekly pivot. I think it's going to be far too strong. The trend is far too strong for that to happen in this particular phase. But it may. You know, if it crashes down that far, that is quite a move. That's quite a substantial move back again. So it could actually just ease a little bit further into this zone, which is where I was looking before. But what I want to see is if whether this bounces to the downside, and I suppose if we're talking about what happens in a regular kind of trend, then I would look for a break to the downside out of this particular line here, and then a bounce from the daily pivot back up to test the trend line, and then probably look for the market to ease down from that particular point, and then it's just about how far it comes before ultimately we look for the long.
Okay, so we can't really say that the market, although it did continue to rally, we can't really say that the market rallied on the back of Mr. Speaker Man coming forward and saying, Theresa, sorry, you can't do that.
Oh, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
The market actually eased off because of what he said.
Yeah. So what drove us to this overbought scenario, do you think?
So John Burko's he only came out last night and said this, and this has caused this kind of price action. But before that, you know, we were expecting Theresa May to be taking her deal back to Parliament. You know, right up until I think it was maybe 7 last night or something like that. The deal was going to go back, and then we were going to get probably voted down again. And there were some whispers that some of the ERG hardliners were going to let it pass, and if that had happened, then that would have helped the pound. But that news wasn't really kind of that forthcoming. So it was looking like it was going to be another defeat for the government, right up until John Burko came out, and he has kind of put the brakes on the train to the upside. We don't want to overstate it because he hasn't. It's not been a substantial announcement that's made the FTSE start to tank by any stretch. But I think when I start to look at the trend, then we are at a substantial high here. I mean, these futures have been a really difficult chart for me to follow because of what I showed you before about the way the price action was. But I think the most important thing is now what's in focus. And the suggestion, in my opinion, is that Brexit probably starts to take a bit more of a back burner. And if that's the case, then we probably will start focusing on the Fed. There's little chance the Fed will raise interest rates, but I don't think traders will be too comfortable going long at an extreme level as we are up here when we look on the FTSE here. We're right at the top end of this box here.
Yep. You know, okay, so let me see if I've got this in my head right. No third attempt to get the same deal through, but she can go away and bring back a completely different deal. Is that right? And is that likely to be the case?
You're not even completely different. Not even completely different. I mean, he says it can't be substantially different, but what you could do is go now to the EU summit on Thursday and say, give me something. Give me a change. I need a change. That change could be...
That many times now, and have said that no, that's it.
Well, that's true. However, the EU may be getting a little bit fed up with this whole scenario themselves, and they may want this deal because the Theresa May deal is actually very good for the EU. So it's in their benefit to try and help this thing through. So they may give her a change, but it won't be a substantial change of the Irish backstop or anything like that. All she needs is a change that gets it back into Parliament, because she's not now concerned that she won't get the votes, because I think some of the Brexiteers are starting to be concerned themselves that if they don't vote for it, they're not going to get Brexit at all. So she's got her ducks lined up on that front. Now she just needs now she just needs to get it back in Parliament. So they might give her like a change which says we'll give you a change which says that you can have 3 months to negotiate this or something. It might be very, very small, and then it's about the Speaker. If she'll take it back to the Speaker and say, is that a change? Is that substantial enough? And he might say that's fine. We don't know from that point what he will do.
So here we go. Yet another delay, and I think for the 700th time, I'll say it again. Good God, how nice it would be if this wasn't in front of us and was behind us. But it is, and unfortunately, up with it we must put.
Yep, absolutely, mate. And when it comes down to it, the way it is at this stage, it's starting to look like a kick it down the road a bit. So it's starting to look like nothing. There's just going to be no decision made by March 29th except for an extension.
And isn't that amazing? 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's far worse than back to zero. It's worse. It's not even back to square one. It's far worse than that. Unbelievable.
Yeah. But the thing is, what will happen from here on in is if the extension comes in, then we're looking to see what happens within Parliament and the power within Parliament and the wranglings within Parliament, because that will change the stance on the EU exit. And with us remaining for a longer period, then there could be a completely different deal. If no, or not leaving at all. That's possible.
All right, so let's bring it back to the charts.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that we should treat it as a non-event at this point and trade what we see in front of us. What do you reckon?
Yes, I completely agree. I think that's exactly the case. I think that it's been, the way it's been has been, I guess, so pushed back. And so there's so much wrangling back and forth. We got nothing substantial, so I think you're absolutely right. Just trade the charts.
Okay, maybe a little bit less enthusiastically in terms of risk that we're prepared to take than would be the case otherwise. But I think that's pretty much where I'm at. And I even attempted to do that today on Euro Yen, trading it short. I'll show you.
Yeah, let's have a look at what you got.
Of course, that hasn't worked out so well yet. We're in negative territory, and the smaller time frames don't look to be complementing my position on the 4-hour chart. But had a choice, I suppose, of trading this on the 4-hour chart and on the daily chart. I chose the riskier option, which of course was to trade it on the 4-hour chart, and I traded underneath this bar here. That is the 4-hour chart. The daily was showing me a bearish engulfing bar and a potential lower high here, and I thought that was a reasonable position to take. Given that we just bounced off this trend line, maybe we're going to bounce off it again, who knows. But I took the riskier option, as I said, and instead of having my stop up here where you would think it would be a little bit safer, I've got it in a far more precarious place, which is just above the daily pivot. So I'm out of the money here at the moment, and as I say, the smaller time frame is not looking that great. But bigger picture, I still think if I do get taken out here, I may go back to the daily chart and replace the order. We shall see if that needs to be the case. So technically, I've actually traded at the bottom of a range as well. if I'm looking at this 4-hour chart, which is not one of my favourite plays, but I did like the fact that we'd taken out these highs here. That means to me that there's liquidity available for people, big fellas who might want to get short here. It looks at this stage, however, as though that is not the case. We will see. Aussie, I suppose, is the most obvious place to start, and that is, let me get rid of a few of these lines, make it a bit more palatable on the eye. If that's a thing, palatable on the eye, it sort of doesn't make sense. Palatable on the tongue, yes. Righto. So what we've got on the Aussie here technically is a re-entry into a range with a bullish engulfing bar backed up by a higher low here. I think we said this once, twice, maybe 3 times now. I didn't want to trade this bar here. I thought it was too big and wanted to see a better scenario. That may yet be the case. If I get a better candle sitting on the weekly pivot again, you can see it's already bounced off the weekly pivot now. But if we get, that's last week. If we come back to it, that's when I'd start to get interested in trading along. However, that said, we had some not so great news on the Aussie this morning, which was the house price index at -2.4. I guess there's no surprise there, given the trend on Aussie house prices has been down for 12 months or more. And that continues to be the case. In fact, it's getting now to a concerning point, I suppose, where I don't think they're at record retracements, but they're probably getting close to that.
That's really interesting, mate.
Yeah, it is in the capital cities.
Yeah.
There were 2 capital cities that were positive. One was Adelaide at 0.1%, and the other was Hobart at Hobart 9.6%. Everything else is negative. And yeah, not so great, you'd have to say. Monetary policy meeting minutes, I haven't read. That's always a very long document to read, so I don't know what really has come out of that. But judging on what I'm seeing in the Aussie dollar, just before we leave Forex Factory, I suppose, in what have we got? An hour and a half. We've got average earnings index coming out on the pound, so that's one worth watching as well, and the unemployment rate to go with it. Okay, so let me go back to the Aussie and what I've seen since the announcement. Let's go to the smaller time frames. Here's the announcement here. Is pretty much back where we started, I suppose, but there is a kind of bearish outlook now since we hit this level 71 again. So it's come off 71 and now back underneath the daily pivots. It is looking a little bit like it wants to go to the short side, and I guess on this chart, the 30-minute, you've got a fair case for that. You've got a reversal situation here, and you've got a significant lower high. Price has broken the daily pivot, retested it, and now falling away from it. So that doesn't look great for the Aussie, I'd have to say, at this point. I guess my bias, therefore, would need to be adjusted a little bit. But I don't know if it's going to be reversed, but it needs to be adjusted a little bit. I have been a little bit bullish across. Don't necessarily like that one. It's probably a trend line. So I guess we're at a spot here where I'd like to see one of 2 things. First thing I'd like to see, to go with my bias, would be break this trend line, find the support level, and then get back above it and retest it. That would give me the confidence to go long. I don't think I'd like to go long in any other circumstance at this point. If I'm to go short, then I need to get away from here right now and find the resistance. So exactly the opposite of what I've just said, basically. Break the trend line, come back below it and retest it, and then look to play it short. So it's a bit of work for me to do there if I am to trade the Aussie. But the overall on the Aussie again was bullish engulfing bar back inside the range, looking for a higher low. So maybe I can do that. Maybe I can trade that two ways. Maybe I could trade a break here down to the weekly pivot. But again, not a good place to go short for me here. I'd much rather go short from this area. So we'll see what happens. If this goes, it goes. It'll go without me from here, though. The euro's become far more interesting than it was prior to having a yak with Ash and the developments overnight, of which I was completely unaware. Sound asleep, of course, me at the time when that happened. I still see this rejection of 113.60 again. Not for the first, not for the second, not for the 100th time, but goodness knows how long this has been going on. And again, same really as the Aussie. What I really wanted to see was this peel back off the monthly pivot in 113.60, come back to the weekly pivot, and then give me a nice higher low so I could trade it long. On the 4-hour chart, that's not as palatable again. Where's that word coming from today? I don't know. As it really, I would like it to be. Neither is it on the daily chart. The reason is this big bear bar here has really not been taken out by a double bottom, by an inverted head and shoulders, by a morning star, anything of that nature. So I don't really have a reversal pattern here on either of these charts that suits me, and for that reason, I'm considering that my bullish outlook is not as founded as it needs to be to trade long. Certainly, I can't trade long here into the monthly pivot or that 113.60 level. Does it give me license, however, to trade in the opposite direction? Well, I guess on the back of that news, it's a consideration. Let me have a look at this on a smaller time frame. Yeah, it's a bit all over the place, isn't it? Playing false breaks as is my wanted times. This being a classic looking false break, as we've got above the line, we've come back below it and we've retested it, but we've rebroken it and then retested it from the high side, and now we're going in the opposite direction. So that's becoming completely confusing, and I don't really want to know about that line anymore. It's going to lead me astray, one would think. And I think I'll use this as a support line rather than a resistance line. Might start at round about this area and sneak it up here. One more maybe. That looks a bit better. Okay, so now we've got a nice confluence area. We've got this resistance area through here, daily pivot through here, monthly pivot up here. Probably I'd like to see a break, hit the monthly pivot, bounce off it, break the daily pivot, retest it, and that would be my cue to go short. But this trend line has to be broken for me to go short here, I think, unless price gets way up here and forms another trend line somewhere that I can use as resistance. But at this point in time, that would be my play. Let it break, let it retest, trade it to the weekly pivot, and that would be my 30-minute trade. That would then give me the opportunity to look at this as I was before on the daily chart or the 4-hour chart, where I would then be looking for a higher low and trade it in the long direction, but not with much conviction, as I said, because I still don't have that reversal pattern that I like to see. So that's the euro. Cable. Look, I said this last night in the free show, and I can't get away from it, to be fair. The only technical way I can see this moving is long. I can't see a short here at all from a technical point of view. We've got a big double bottom here. We've got a higher low. Sorry, we've got a higher high, a higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Aren't we just looking for a higher low here to get back into the game? That would be my assessment anyway. And if we are going to trade technically, then that's exactly what I'll be looking for. Tough, of course, to call it from here because we've come back kind of rapidly. You'd rather see a retracement that looks like that over a period of time than what we've got at the moment, and that is quite messy. I'd have to say we've gone into consolidation, as you would expect. It's either consolidation or retracement after one of these big moves, no question. And really we're seeing consolidation at the moment rather than retracement. 4-hour charts, it'll slow it down a little bit, and it actually looks like a potential trade here this morning. I had a look at this and I thought, yeah, I really couldn't see my way clear to get into this long. Why? It's probably gut feel more than anything, to be fair. And really, at the end of the day, you're trading straight into a resistance level with a reasonably sized candle. So it's not the best, to be fair. What I'd like to see is another pullback to the weekly pivot and give me a better bar to trade or a better scenario than currently exists. So, and I'm not saying for 1 second that this can't go and go strong. Of course it can. And if it does, it'll simply go without me at this point. But I'd really like to see something a little more friendly a trade than what I see before me at the moment. If I am to trade the pound long, is it possible for me to trade it short? Look, I really don't think so at this point. I don't have a reversal situation on the daily chart. I don't have a reversal situation on the 4-hourly chart. So in other words, I haven't got a double top, I haven't got a head and shoulders, I haven't got an evening star, anything like that. So at this point in time, I have to wait till I do have one of those scenarios and then think about it. So it's a long way off from here for me to think short pound. Of course, anything that's got a B in front of it and filled in by REXIT can change that very dramatically and quickly. What else? Aussie CAD, am I still in that? Barely still in that. Those of you who took that with me on, well, you wouldn't have taken it with me on last Friday, but I did flag last Thursday that I would do exactly as I've done. I've taken an entry above this bar here. I have taken profit now on this. I got sick of it waiting for it to burst through here, and I took my profit, and my stops are at entry, so it's a winning trade no matter what. But I really would like to have seen that break through here, because I think the potential here is strong for this to go and challenge these levels here that I've got marked. So there's a take profit there, and there's a take all there. But we've got to hang on here at the moment as the retracement looks to be on, and the daily pivot holding that up at the moment. If you're not in this, what do I see? Look, I can't go long from here. It's just not the way I go. So I really can't do anything. Maybe a little bit later we get something in this vicinity. Shorts. Yeah, look, shorts are more possible than longs at the moment because of the situation that we're at resistance. And therefore, if I saw a break here, the resistance hit back underneath and retest maybe the daily pivot and the trend line, then I'd have to have a short bias, short-term short bias, mind you, down to the weekly pivot, maybe even down to this blue line, which is the top of this channel, which has been broken, which is part of the reason I took that trade in the first place. So not easy on Aussie CAD. We'll just hold our breaths here and hope we can get a little bit of a follow through on the trade. As I say, it's not the end of the world if we get our stops hit, because it can only be a winner. Pound yen, very, very similar to cable, of course, and I don't see anything different here that I didn't see on cable, so I'll probably just skip over this one and go on to euro pound, where I'm still, I wouldn't say I'm super keen, but I'm still keen to get back into this short, but not here. I didn't have a good look at this candle. and I couldn't for the life of me see what it was bouncing off. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me, that level. I just don't see a level here that it's bounced off. So it's maybe just, I don't know, a bit of profit taking off these guys who played the double bottom or whatever, I don't know. But we've come back to the weekly pivot and got below it, trying now to get back above it. But this retest is important. And I think I'd probably rather play this short off here than I did, or than I would have off this level, which doesn't exist for me. So this level is interesting, and I am going to keep an eye on that. If I see the opportunity to go short at this area, then I shall. You can see there are two pivots there, very, very close together. So it's a good area to launch a trade from, in my opinion. Two ways to look at it. If it closes, the market closes above this on a 4-hour chart and then retests it, then I'm back up here. I'm not sure how I'm going to play this other than allow it to break, then come back underneath and retest the confluence area if I'm to play it short. Maybe there's a support line comes through here a little bit later, I don't know. But that's the 4-hour scenario. If I'm looking to play it on a smaller time frame, then I've probably got different opportunities. Maybe through here there's a line I can look at. I'll put this back on the 4-hour where it belongs. Okay. Yeah, there's really nothing available to me right now, even if I wanted to trade this short. And going back to my my trade plan and my normal trade plan, really when I look at this chart, an hourly chart, I've got a double bottom, I've got a consolidation area, but a significant higher low. Is this another higher low? Maybe it is, but it's a messy chart. It's a chart I'm not really in love with, and I guess no surprise, given the two protagonists here, the euro and the pound. It is a bit of an arm wrestle for this pair over the last goodness knows how long, with potentially momentum swinging back euro's way, whereas let's say a week or two ago, maybe 3 or 4 ago, it was definitely in the opposite direction. The pound was overpowering the euro rather rapidly. So maybe we've had a little bit of a change here, and that's why I'm not, as I said, super keen to trade anything that isn't ironclad. And this one here, as I say, yesterday was not ironclad, and for that reason, I'm not in the market yet on euro pound. But if I see something that looks fantastic for the downside, then I'm happy to go with it. Just messy through here to trade to the upside at the moment, in my opinion. Now, euro yen, as I said before, the daily pivot's certainly under pressure here, as is my stop on the 4-hour chart. And again, if that gets hit, that stop, I'll look to go back to the daily chart and replace this order on the daily candle rather than the 4-hour candle that I have used. Why am I so bearish? Look, really the reason is the bearish engulfing bar at a strong resistance level. In my opinion, a strong resistance level. There's also a horizontal level comes through here. So it's a nice confluence. And then potential for the lower high. I may just have got a little bit cheeky trading on a 4-hour instead of a daily. We'll see. We're not dead yet, but we're not feeling real flash either in that trade. Do I need to change anything on the 4-hour? Look, no, we're in a range. We're absolutely in a range. There's no question there. If I get an opportunity on the 4-hour chart and can play, not that one, maybe move it up to here. Not the arrow, dope, that one. Okay, so again, if we can get up to here and put in another potential false break underneath here, retest, that might be an opportunity on the 4-hour chart. Far better than I traded this morning, because we're at the bottom of the range. So if I can trade off resistance on the 4-hour, fine. If not, the daily might have to be the go. We shall see. Couple more. EuroCAD, not really interested in EuroCAD. It has broken through that consolidation area, not for the first time, not for the second time, but for a third time. So these highs become important. If it looks like pulling back off those, then there may be an opportunity to trade this back towards the weekly pivot, but at the moment, nothing for me. Dollar yen continues to be a little bit of a mystery bag as well. Looked at this yesterday, looked at this bar here and thought, well, this could go one of two ways. Not yesterday, the day before. And really nothing has happened since, to be fair. We've had a little bit of a gap down this morning, and there's a little bit of pressure coming onto the cross, but really it's going nowhere, and until something happens to drive it, I don't see that changing. One thing I noted this morning, and I can't remember the cross, when you're having a chat, Ash, I'll have a look for it. Something that I've rarely seen. It's a decisive bullish bar being engulfed by a decisive bullish bar. Quite crazy.
Oh, where's that?
Obviously, as the result of a gap. It's only on a small time frame. I'll only be guessing. I'll have to have a quick squeeze through and show you. Doesn't happen often. But that's about it, mate. That's where I'm at. Nothing terribly exciting, to be fair.
Okay, well, the FTSE has started straight out the traps.
Wow.
Bang to the upside. Just just crazy moves, and very frustrating. You know, just trying to get on board with this is so difficult, and it's just fascinating that that it is just turning at every possible chance of support. You know, it's not breaking any support whatsoever on this on these smaller term timeframes. We see the if we look at the 15, for example. Well, the 15 actually, maybe you could argue down here there was a little bit of a break of support, but it's fairly irregular, and you know, another huge push to the upside. The fact that it's closed above this level does suggest that there's some possible upside, but again, you know, you just kind of look at it and think, well, it's just so overextended up here that there's not going to be a lot to tip it to the downside, but by the same token, just doesn't want to come back, and it's suggesting further and further that this rally is just going to go and not give us a chance to get in. It's just back to the weekly chart, edging ever closer, really, to these levels up here. I mean, it's still got some ways to go, still 140 pips to get to that particular point, but that looks like it's path right now. I mean, this inverted head and shoulders that is down here, and it is a very bullish inverted head and shoulders when you see the right shoulder so much higher than the left, but it did not seem to want to complete the same time period of the left shoulder. You know, this right shoulder is not only a lot more bullish, but it's a lot more shallow as well. So yeah, the FTSE just does not want to come back, and it's certainly not looking like it's coming back soon. But highly irregular price action, and you've got to say that 140 pips is well within its sights. I suppose there could be another 30 pips before we see anything to the downside. But what's going to bring it back? That's the question. It seems those US-China trade talks have really boosted this market forward. And the other thing is that even though we might see that looks like a fairly obvious point of potential resistance right there. But yeah, what we seem to be looking at with this is some of the other markets around the world may weaken, but given the fact that investors want to find some possible trades in areas, then the UK market seems to be a great opportunity right now. Maybe they're trying to get their deals in while the pound is still relatively cheap. I don't know, but yeah, astonishing, mate. Absolutely astonishing moves in this market.
Yeah, amazing, eh? Well, I guess that happens every now and then, and the sad part is when it's gone, it doesn't give you an opportunity to get into it, and that's really a pain in the bum, especially when you bias in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you just got to kind of sit on the sidelines, haven't you, with this stuff? So
yeah, it is what it is, mate. Nothing can be done about it, unfortunately.
Just hearing that WTI is continuing its move to the upside. Those tensions between Saudi Arabia and Russia have been quickly forgotten about, and the OPEC organization, the OPEC group, seem to be quite happy to continue their cuts in production. Maybe the Russians have come on board now. I was there was a little bit in the background in my ear listening to that, and there's a little bit of disagreement between the Saudis and the Russians, but as it goes, it looks like the OPEC group are quite happy to continue those production cuts. Given the fact that we Paul was on yesterday talking about the seasonality with that particular news story out. And there just seems to be a lack of detail on what's going on with the Russians. The oil market certainly appears right now that it could just fly to the upside, and in some respects a complete reverse mirror image of what's going on with the FTSE. And this is really what I'm talking about. When the market flies to the downside, then really moving to the upside aggressively is quite something that happens quite often. And again, that's the danger with getting into the FTSE, that it's been so parabolic, if you like, that the move to the upside has been so parabolic that we could actually see some significant weakening. But what's going to cause it, I just don't know. I mean, and unless Trump comes out and shakes the wasp's nest again somehow by saying the trade deal is off, then I don't know what's going to bring this market down. When we look at the FTSE, I don't know what's going to bring it back. So even if we are kind of in overextended territory, that the next potential move that I'd like to look for is to the downside. But where do you get in? And I suppose it's probably going to be until it gets up this point, we're not really looking for downside. But again, what's going to be the catalyst to bring that down? Because the FTSE is on a crazy tear. I'll show you this on a 5-minute chart, because this really does express it quite significantly. The moves just go and go and go. Just not even this morning. Not even a chance of the market settling down. Let's have a quick look at the market breadth as well. Do you know what's the interesting factor here, though, is the low volatility, because yeah, because of the low volatility, it just means that there's nothing holding it back. There's nothing that's holding the move back to the downside as it surges forward again. Let's have a look. FTSE 100. Straight out the trap. 77% of stocks in positive territory. So incredibly positive market so far this morning.
The bulls are out of bed already.
Yep. Yeah, the bulls are on the charge, mate.
This it's completely unrelated to anything except as a point of interest, I suppose, was the Aussie Kiwi 4-hour chart this morning. I'll just give you a quick squeeze. Whilst we're in a bit of a holding pattern. Still got your screen. Has that changed or not? No. Why is it so?
Hold on. Try that.
Ready, set, go. Doesn't wanna. There you go. Look at that. That's an unusual sight on a 4-hour chart.
This is the sorry, show me that again. Oh yeah,
it's Aussie Kiwi.
Yeah, so that's called an outside bar. Yeah, absolutely.
Very unusual. You won't find too many of those. And actually, I'd like to go back and see what happened after the last time that occurred on any chart. I'm half inclined to go long here, but only half inclined.
I can see why.
Yeah. What do we got?
Aussie Kiwi, yeah. But then, I mean, would that housing data put you off with this sort of stuff, though?
No, pretty much expected. I think the market's been aware that the Aussie housing market's been crashing for quite some time. I don't think confirmation of that's going to do that much, to be fair.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? When you get things that are telegraphed, which is again, back to the FTSE. That's the interesting factor here. And I don't really want to second guess it, because the market could turn around on a penny the way it's surging forward. But the US-China trade war kind of clearing up has certainly helped markets across the board move to the upside. But the other thing is that the Fed kind of telegraphing the fact that they are not looking to raise interest rates is another reason why there's so much confidence out there. There's almost nothing in the way, and that's what creates this low volatility environment. There's just nothing that is reining this back in. If there was a chance the Fed could raise interest rates, then maybe we would see the markets just a bit calmer. But the fact that we don't really have that, then it's odd, isn't it? Because it's almost like, when it's like this, you could just say, well, just buy it, just buy the damn thing, because it's going up and going up and going up. But knowing about the bits and pieces to do with strategy, you just kind of the justification becomes very, very difficult, because of knowing that overbought scenarios do tend to retrace. Embedded scenarios can completely put the indicators in a scenario where they are unreadable. But in saying that, just looking at the price being so overextended, we know that extreme confidence is often followed by extreme fear. So, not knowing what can happen there. But do you know what? It could be. It's an interesting one with this stuff, because this is the kind of environment where the Fed come out and say something completely different than is expected.
Which would be they are going to raise interest rates.
Yeah, which would be that they like the way that the US economy is going, and they're going to raise interest rates. I suppose the difficulty is that the slightly weaker data out of the United States doesn't suggest that would be the responsible thing, considering they've already come out and said that they will listen to the market, and they will make sure that they are market centric, if you like, and support the stock market and the equity market in any way they can. And really, that's certainly the best way to support them is by not raising interest rates, so people don't worry so much about putting their money in cash. They just want to kind of get their money in the stock market. But yeah, what brings this down, mate, I do not know. But moves like this are just
trying to pin a cloud down. It's exactly the same going the other way. Cat holding knife, pin the floating cloud. It's impossible on any given day. It can be done, but I haven't got a strategy that allows me to do that. I know George has got one that allows him to jump in, or probably not on a bar such as that. That's pretty big. The one that the big, what's that? The opening bar, is it?
Yeah, that's the 5 as well. That's just a 5-minute bar. It's not even a long-term bar there. It's just a 5-minute bar. Jumps to the upside, holds the breakout point, and then we get another huge bar, a fairly big bar. Then slowing down a little bit here, but when you're looking at this, you're just thinking there's probably going to be another huge bar coming.
There are strategies that allow you to do that, but certainly not mine. And there's no way in there for me. No way. In fact, there'll be no way into the downside either. That'll go fairly fast as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways, it is what it is, mate. We've got new candles on the 30s. I'll just have a quick squeeze and see if there's anything there that is of interest. The Aussie is actually interesting. Backing up this break and retest of the daily pivot is now the or pull back away from this trend line, it's giving me thoughts of weekly pivot test. But to trade into this level is tantamount to suicide. The low of the day, which is a rule of mine, I don't trade into the low of the day unless it's a new low. This is not a new low. Yeah, I can't take it. There's by all appearances an acceleration level right here, but it's too dangerous to trade it. Got to get up here if I'm to trade the Aussie short. So kind of no man's land on that one. Yes, it will break out. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but no good for me right now. Euro's had a little bit of a rally, without question. Hasn't been able to take out the high as yet. And of course, we've got 113.60, my old favourite, and the monthly pivot not too far away as well. So there's a little bit of work to do for the euro to actually get beyond this point. I'm not saying it can't, that's for sure. But if I'm looking to trade it long, same as we've just been talking about it, I ain't going to do it from here. It's got to come back for me to look to the high side. To the short side, potential for this to become a double top, then I'd look for a lower high, but you know, a lot of time has to pass for that. Cable, again, no man's land. We've got a resistance trend line, we've got a support trend line, and we're bang in the middle of those, so no chance at this point. Still hanging in there in this Aussie CAD long, but that news on oil, how far is it broken? Oh, it's right at the high now. Okay, and new highs today. So yeah, it's still going, isn't it? But it's at that level that I was, and this was part of the reason I got into this trade. This level here is kind of the last line of defense for oil, which of course is not the CAD, but it is very heavily correlated to the CAD. And I feel if oil comes off here, retraces off this level, which it doesn't look like doing, I've got to say, then that should drag the CAD down with it, and therefore my Aussie CAD becomes good again. But we haven't got much space here left, and like I said, this can only be a winner. We've banked, and our stops are at entry, so there's no drama if that is the case. I don't think I'd look to chase it, given that we are, well, no, I wouldn't chase it. What I'd like to see is that level go then and be retested if I can get back in long. But what I'd then be looking at is trading the top of this range back to the bottom. So that would be probably the most logical thing for me to do. Speaking of range, there's one for you. Pound yen is stuck in that range for the day, or at this time during the day. Everything's in no man's land. You know, we're straddling pivots here. We're not at a resistance level or support level. We do have a sort of kind of higher low here, but it's not tradable for me. So again, nothing. Euro yen, that's really got my stop under pressure here on the 4-hour chart. The only thing that can save us here is the daily pivot, of course, and it's sometimes known to do that. We will see. I have no intention of doing anything at all, except I'll watch this area very closely and maybe replace my order, but this time on the daily, and put my stop loss in a far safer place than it currently is. But nothing to do on the smaller time frames either. Again, Euro CAD is pretty much in no man's land for me again. Hang on, I can't see my charts. There we go. Dollar yen, same. There's very little happening around the place. Euro Aussie has broken through, but again at a resistance level, and no confluence here for me to trade from. Let me have a look at this Aussie Kiwi. Is it at all feasible for me to trade this long? kind of is. Yesterday's daily pivot finds that back above it, retest. That would be the only chance. So a lot of time has to pass before that happens, and really not interested in anything else. So I've got my hands firmly underneath my bum, mate, and nothing to do at all. That's pretty boring, I know. What about your Bitcoin? How's that going?
That's always an interesting one. Just quickly look at that.
Yeah, amazing.
45. That's almost a 0.5% move, and we've just got over the first half an hour, and we're up 0.5% on the FTSE 100. It's crazy moves today. Bitcoin, which, do you know what this says to me, is that there's some serious downside on its way. Right, Bitcoin. Here we go. Well, Bitcoin's interesting actually, because the 4,000 level is it seems to be the line in the sand for Bitcoin, and we're not too far away from there. We're about 50 pips away from that 4,000 level. It's still holding in this pattern. I guess the traders are really going to start to get confidence in this if this starts to, if this can break forward here. I suppose if it breaks either way, is going to be the key aspect for Bitcoin. But if this does break to the upside, then I suggest that there's probably some open water. Let's just have a quick look at this on a weekly chart and get rid of some of these lines.
I guess the weird part about this Bitcoin and cryptos in general, I suppose, there's nothing else that's obvious to move them. Like, there's no fundamental situation I can think of, apart from all the money in the world being sucked up by a vacuum cleaner or something, that can drive this.
Well, the interesting thing is that I'm in the same school as you, where I'm not really aware of the fundamentals, but they are there. If you speak to people that trade these cryptocurrencies, they're fully aware of what's going on with how the cryptocurrencies are being traded within the banks, and the way that people think about them within the banks and how they're going to be used within the banks. JP Morgan are talking about having their own cryptocurrency. Facebook were talking about their own cryptocurrency. There might be some sort of proxy of using a Bitcoin as part of that as well. And Ripple is another crypto platform that people seem to be quite keen on as well, where it would be to do with bank-to-bank lending or bank-to-bank transfers. So there are fundamentals out there, but as I say, like you, I'm not really aware of it. This is Ripple, this is XRP, and this, from what I gather, has the most use of all the cryptos right now. So we do have this some of these cryptocurrencies that do actually have a role to play. What Bitcoin's role is, I just don't know. It's a little bit of a curveball, but it is there. But I just don't think, I'm not very good at. It's a lot easier if you have the mainstream media reporting on what you're investing in. But there are other media outlets which will discuss these things specifically. But you do have to do some digging. But I think those people that are interested in these cryptocurrencies and in these markets will do their digging. They will go and find out what's out there. So they do exist, mate. The fundamentals are out there, but I'm just not very aware of them.
And I guess another point is, who trades this? Are there retail traders only? Are there institutions like banks, like JP Morgan, that are actually out there physically putting money into a speculative market?
Yeah, well, I think they do. Because I know Bill Gates is quite. I don't know if he's heavily into something like Bitcoin, but I know that he's an advocate, and I know that Richard Branson is also an advocate of Bitcoin as well. So, they are out there. The people that are interested in these markets but there are some big players. So as far as I'm aware, as well as I say, with JP Morgan kind of coming out with their one as well, maybe they'll use Bitcoin or something like that. Then the banks are starting to recognise that it's going to be hard to ignore the cryptocurrency market. But I guess it's just not widespread enough as yet. And the question is, what's going to make it that way? Because, as far as I'm aware, that the real dive to the downside in some of these cryptocurrencies was because China. As far as I've heard that China banned the use of them. I think, and that's what it comes down to. The governments, as you said, why would they want them? Because it puts the fiat currency under a lot of pressure when people are starting to use a completely different currency that is nothing to do with theirs. So nations will take probably some quite extreme actions if they are not going to get the benefits of things like Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies.
No, so we'll just hand our control of the world to you guys. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and the big banks know that that will effectively sign their death warrant. So I don't know why they would be so keen to allow that to happen. The likelihood is they won't allow it to happen. They're not going to be a part of that at all. Not going to be party to that at all. So
unless they own it.
Unless they own it, yeah. So I suppose we'd probably hear about that because the mainstream media would be right on top of it. But right now, the mainstream media, they talk about it in a kind of as a point of news that they had to talk about it a little while ago because it was just on an absolute tear. But recently the whole state of the Bitcoin reporting has just fallen off a cliff, and I guess there are things happening in the background. But by the time it gets to the mainstream media, probably most of the things will be in place.
I guess the value, the real value, is in the actual technology itself, and I don't mean just blockchain, but how Bitcoin, for instance, not manipulates but utilizes the blockchain and how they refine that. And once they've done that to a certain level, then the powers that we've just spoken about become interested enough to actually do own it, and that's where the value would come from. Okay,
yeah,
they'll buy that off you for so how many trillions of dollars. So I guess there is a value in that regard. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I suppose this is the thing. It's just it's just not being aware of it. I just don't know. I'm just not aware of it. I'm just not aware of what moves Bitcoin and what the situation is with Bitcoin. So that's the thing with it, isn't it? Just
well, I think there's good news because Paul was mentioning last night that we're hopefully not affiliating, but getting someone on board that does exactly that. So as soon as that happens, we'll get him on the show and have a yarn to him.
Yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah, that'd be good. It would be great to. Well, that would be fantastic if he would come on here as well. It'd be fantastic for us to kind of just have somebody that to start with can let us know where to mine for the information, because that's really what it comes down to as much as anything else. The only way you can educate yourself in this stuff is to know where to look, and yeah, I just don't know where to look. I mean, I think my brother could probably shed some light on it because he's invested in this cryptocurrencies, but he's so into conspiracy theories. I don't know whether I would trust his source, and that's the problem. There are kind of YouTubers out there that are talking about this, that, and the other. But and that's the thing with the media outlets, is that at least with Bloomberg, there's an element of trust that you can put in them when they are reporting. But when it comes down to some of these Johnny-come-latelys that are on YouTube, it's very difficult to know why they're saying what they're saying. Everybody's got a specific stance and axe to grind when it comes down to investment ideas, I'm sure. But some of these smaller players, it's usually because they're selling some other products, of their own. That people should be investing with them because they know how to read all this stuff.
You should be surprised at that. There's nothing new there.
Yeah. Well, the FTSE 100 continues to edge its way forward. We just had a little gap on the 5-minute chart and the 15 as well, which could suggest just a little bit of exhaustion. And just to talk about gaps a little bit, I'll bring the 5-minute chart here. You can see that there's a very, very small gap here. Now, a gap does suggest that that there's exhaustion in a market. It could suggest one of two things. It could suggest exhaustion, or that gap can actually, and the exhaustion gap will be closed substantially, or it could suggest that that would become a level of support. Now, because of where it is, this looks like more of an exhaustive gap than anything else. I mean, that does just suggest that that orders in this particular area had just dried up, and people are starting to get so nervous that they're missing it. They're just kind of putting orders in above levels now. This is kind of like almost like a stop level. So this exhaustion gap is suggesting that this market is in an incredibly dangerous area right now, but only on a 5-minute chart. So a dangerous area on a 5-minute chart could start to make it move to the downside, but find support again, and then move to the upside. But it certainly suggests that this particular move is probably near its peak.
Now we looked at oil, we looked at the FTSE, we've looked at most of the currencies that I trade, and we haven't been able to find a trade. Gold, is that doing anything?
Well, let's have a quick look at gold. Always worth being on top of that. Yeah, that's a 5-minute chart. That's oops. There we go. Yeah, gold still looks like it's being supported. Now, we did discuss gold, didn't we, as a few weeks ago as a potential selling opportunity in this level, at this level here. And it held for a certain period. It's moving back up into that area. It might look like a bit of a distribution pattern here. We've got a left shoulder, potential head here, potential right shoulder. Could even be the start of a diamond formation, which are incredibly rare, but do exist in the market every now and again. So that would be a possible bearish scenario if that was to start to break the downside.
That chart's giving me bear. I'm looking at the evening star. I'm looking at the bearish engulfing lower high at a resistance level. Why wouldn't that be a short signal?
It certainly looks like it, doesn't it? Down to 12.23 maybe. It's quite a lot, though. It's quite a long way down. It does suggest that they. I mean, the thing is, when you think about the one of the uses of gold, is certainly something that people invest in for a risk-off environment. And given the moves in the stock market, it doesn't suggest that we are in a risk-off environment. So why would gold strengthen? That'd be my first question. Also, it acts as a inflation hedge as well. So when inflation is starting to pop forward, well, again, the Fed aren't coming out with a particularly hawkish tone right now, which suggests inflation isn't really a problem. So another reason to suggest that maybe gold is not so attractive as a potential buying opportunity. We do find ourselves at a point of resistance right along here. And we do find ourselves, and that's on the weekly chart, we do find ourselves at a point of resistance along here. So yeah, looks like a couple of reasons to suggest that gold would be, and that is a head and shoulders pattern as well, or a diamond pattern. So there's a couple of things which suggest that that gold is probably something that I'd be looking for downside rather than upside. Looks like we might well have, when we look at the 4-hour chart. It's not the nicest chart, is it? It's not that clean with the moves.
I'm looking at all of those charts, and I'm looking for a way to get into a short, but I don't see one at all.
No, it's not a particularly clean looking chart, is it? But is that now? Look at this. This is a really interesting. We very rarely see this, but what we've got on the FTSE here is a classic shooting star. Now this is incredibly bearish. Again, it's only down to a 5-minute chart, but this is incredibly bearish. The shooting star is a gap. You know, traditionally, or when we talk about morning stars and evening stars, the star aspect of it should really be a gap. But they're so rare that we start to treat other charting patterns as if they are acting, you know, similar to the morning and evening star. But that is a classic star formation there, you know, where it breaks away. You get a reversal bar, which is a high test bar, if you like, or that is a shooting star. And now this third bar is fairly key. But as I say, this is only on a 5-minute chart. This is just for educational purposes. But this is the key bar now. Now, if this bar closes more than 2/3 into the body of this bar, that is an absolute stamped on evening star pattern with one bar up, incredibly bullish, a gap with a shooting star, and then the third bar cutting more than 2/3 into this bar and closing, more than 2/3 into this bar. That's a classic evening star pattern, and suggesting that
you trade it.
I beg your pardon?
Burning question is, would you trade it?
Do you know what? I would in a regular environment, but my problem with it is that it's on a 5-minute chart, and that's the only reason I'd use it for education. Because what I'd want to see is this on a daily chart or a 4-hourly chart, and then it would be tradable. But unless you're a scalper, trading a 5-minute chart just because you've seen an evening star would not be the wisest thing to do. So yeah, as I say, it's just to kind of show people about bar formations and what we'd need to see for those to trigger a bias. And the bias would certainly be, if you saw this on a daily chart, the bias would certainly be for downside. But they're so rare, you know, it's so rare that you see a genuine gap and then the reversal bar that I thought it was well worth kind of having a look at, because, you know, gaps halfway through the first hour is they're just not generally seen. But yeah, let's see how this bar ends up turning up. We've got another 3 minutes, and certainly my personal stance would be that it's probably much more likely to close down here than it is up here. But who knows with the way that this market's going.
So I'm guessing with you traveling tomorrow, FTSE at an incredible tear, you're probably not going to be trading too much for the rest of the week.
No, mate. Do you know what? I don't particularly like trading while I'm away anyway, because it's just a bit distracting. Looking at charts when I need to be focusing on, delivering the best possible weekend that I can as part of the team, it just doesn't really help me. So I tend to either close what I've got if there's anything open, or just don't enter any new positions. So no, there won't be any trading for me. Probably not for the week. I mean, I'm traveling. I won't be in tomorrow because I'll be traveling, obviously. And Thursday, I probably will be here Thursday. But and then next week I'm traveling back, so that's also going to be difficult. And being the final week of the month, I'd kind of like to trade it, because I really like the last week of each month. But I don't know whether that's going to be possible either. I mean, you know, in some respects, I wouldn't mind trading after the whole Brexit scenario is finished on the 29th of March, or certainly until we get onto the next particular stage, because this market has been a mess for me, but just because I haven't been able to take that one. But you know what? And this is the frustrating thing for me, is that the only reason I'm not in this FTSE 100 is because of this bar all the way down here. Otherwise, I would have been I'd have been part of this, and that's why it's been a really frustrating move. You know, just seeing it take off and take off and take off. I've just found it very, very difficult to get on board. And I would have got in at this level, but again, it didn't really come back far enough. I was looking along here as a potential entry. Didn't come back far enough. Went again, and then after that, it's just if I just felt like I would have been chasing something. But as it's happened, it's, you know, the move's been so crazy that's not been the evidence, actually.
The old woulda, coulda, shoulda trade.
Yeah.
That, we're all very much a part of. And sadly, you know, the more you learn, the more you sit in front of charts, the more you would think you wouldn't miss these. But if they're not there, they're not there. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the way in, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I probably, I mean, look, you know, if I had my time back again, then maybe this bar would have been enough for me. But I was really looking for it on bar 1, and then my focus was whipped away. So it is just one of those, unfortunately. But yeah, it's going to be difficult for me to trade now for a little while. But we will find another way, mate. Probably going to be, and this is the other thing. I've got to consider the phase that we have, and the phase that we have in the FTSE is purely for upside. And I don't like getting in this late. You know, even if I did want to trade it, I don't want to get in this late. So even if now it pulls back to, I guess, this point, that's going to be, you know, that's too higher level for me. If it pulls back to this point or this point, that's starting to look a little bit weaker as a structure. So I'm not really interested in that. So really, for me, I'm probably waiting for the next probably the next leg down rather than up. So yeah, there's going to be a hell of a lot of patience from my perspective from this particular point.
All right, mate. My main focus today will be the euro, and I'm just waiting for it to hit that 113.60/monthly pivot area, and then I'll be looking for shorts down to the weekly pivot. That's going to be my play for the day, if it will set up for me. So that's where I'm at. Okay,
mate. Sounds good. Well, I guess we may as well close up. I'm going to go pack and get myself together.
Go and do it. Fly well, and we'll catch up with you potentially on Thursday, if not next Monday, mate.
Great stuff. Great stuff. All right. Well, yeah. Have a good rest of the day, guys. What are you going to do tomorrow, mate? Are you going to be in, or are you going to take it off?
I'll be in. I may not last the distance. We'll see how the market looks, and certainly have a look at the currencies. But I'll be here, same bat time, same trade channel.
Great stuff. All right, mate. All right. Have a good one, and I'll speak to you Thursday.
All right, mate. Uru.
Speak soon, guys.